Wow.
How many of those videos there exist?
I don't know. There's a lot of them though. There's like 15 maybe different ones.
That would be an amazing job or work. Like you just design those short videos.
Yeah, right. I think we can even at some point we could make our own. So if we get creative enough, we can like do some sort of a cool intro. But anyways, welcome. Good morning or afternoon in your case.
Was it to me or the audience?
Oh, that's yes, to you, to the audience, to whoever here. I think we have 7 people. Welcome everyone. If you are here this morning with us, Stacey Gonzalez, and with my fabulous, amazing co-host, Nikki Vinogradov. This is Energized Mindfulness, where we create space for you to get into that energy and that flow state to really rocket ship you into your day. So welcome everyone. If you're here, drop us a little hello in the comments so we can say hello back to you this morning.
So flow and rocket ship, that sounds like a really good beginning. And hi everyone. And while I still remember, maybe as we go through this introduction, I'll just do a short intro to today's session, what it's about. Feel free to really listen intently, and if something really resonates with you, then feel free to write a question or something that you really want to hear more about, something that you feel that would be beneficial and useful to your life, because today's topic is so big topic and so important topic that we really can go into many directions. And we want to go with Stacey and Maestro, who's now in the background. We want to go into things that are actually beneficial to you. And so this is already our 10th session, and at least, and we are now in this kind of, we could say, stream or in the process of going through very specific steps. And at the end of, if you go through all these steps, just like you, Stacey said, you will know how to get into flow, you know how to get into that rocket ship. And what we have done so far is we looked into what affects on the level of brain, on the internal level, what affects our energy levels, our mental energy, how it's connected with vision, how vision puts everything into life in context. And then we talked about, okay, we have the vision, then what about having this confidence, this calmness and clarity on how to actually bring the vision into reality. So we talked about how to think, how to see the planning process. And in the previous session, we talked about how to become a masterful decision maker, and continuing from that. And why we want to make that recap is that all these sessions are connected to each other, because we human beings, we are complex things, and it's very difficult to just look at things out of context. It's almost like having a car. Even if you have fuel and GPS and you're good at driving, if you don't have engine, well, I don't know, basically then you have very impractical room where you can hang, but it's not going to go anywhere. And today's topic is thinking. More specifically, kind of, are you guiding your attention? Are you lost in your thoughts? And before I pass on to Stacey, I'm kind of saying these 3 points almost to myself, because it's so big topic that I want to remind myself what are the 3 main things that I want to be addressing, and then Stacey and Marshall will add their flavor, and likely we'll always get on the same page, kind of. Now, the first thing that I do want to be able to communicate is that it is actually possible to be the masters of our thoughts, or to be lost in them. And second, it's this really interesting thing is, not only do we have 6,000 thoughts per day, which I kind of look at thoughts as doors into, not into different realities, but in some way, why not? Because every thought opens different possibilities, different actions, different thinking, and that leads into us building our lives. But in addition to that, the quality the flavor or the impact of our thoughts into us depends in what kind of brain state we are. The brain state we are in works as the filter on how the thoughts come into our conscious mind. And the third thing is, hopefully it's not, I don't know, too metaphysical, but kind of to understand that we are not our thoughts. And why is it even important to understand? Why is it important and very useful to understand that we are not our thoughts? So those are the main things that I'm now putting out there. And Stacey, you can maybe
You're
take it
putting
from
them out
there.
into the ether. Well, yes, I'm really excited about this conversation today. And whether you've been at any of our other, conversations or not, welcome. Drop us a comment, say hello. We are super glad that you are here with us this morning. Our goal is to, if you walk away with one nugget, right? Like one nugget, one idea, one moment that illuminates for you in a way that wouldn't have, that's the hope, right? Whether you've been here before or not. So welcome. And thank you. And so that, as this whole idea of we are not our thoughts, and we talked before the show, and I've had a bunch of different thoughts about like, what do I want to talk about this week? And we're kind of moving into the emotion category. So our emotions, how do we transform our emotions? What are our emotions in April? We're going to be talking about emotions. And Nikki, I didn't prep you on this, and I didn't know. I was kind of sitting with a few things, but and we haven't even talked about this, so I don't know how pop culture, U.S. pop culture, how your U.S. pop culture knowledge is.
Pretty okay.
We're gonna find out. Okay?
At least till like 2005, and rest after that quite okay, I would say.
Okay, all right. Well, and
Still.
you were not necessarily. Oh no, this happened 2 weeks ago. So I want to talk about what happened at the Oscars.
Yeah, I don't know.
And yeah, and so I want to talk about that from a different perspective, not from a social construct, a race issue, any of that stuff, which I think lots of
Let's
dialogue
not go into that.
lots of stuff has been said about that, right? But I want to talk about it from the sense of what the hell was happening on an emotional level, right? What was happening inside, potentially. We're not the people, and I'm talking about Will Smith and Chris Rock and Jada Smith and the whole situation, right? We're not them, so we can't, we won't have the ultimate insight that they would have. But just from an outside perspective, what happens when emotions become so overwhelming that they cause us, to your point, to action and to take action and bring these thoughts in that cause us to act or react in a way that maybe is out of alignment with who we are, or who we want to be. And so I think for me, that was the thing that stuck out as, somebody who I've been a Will Smith and a Chris Rock fan for a really long time, and a Jada Pinkett Smith fan, like for back in the like Tupac days, right? I'm a 90s girl. I grew up in the hip hop 90s culture. And so it was less for me about judging them. There was no judgment. It was more of like, what is happening, and being really sad. Like I felt really bad and really sad that whatever might be happening was so overwhelming that it was uncontrollable on behalf of the individuals that this occurred to. So yeah, so I'd love to kind of deconstruct that a little bit from your perspective.
What would be the question there?
Yeah. So what is happening in our emotional state that causes us to become so overwhelmed that we take action in such a way that is kind of outside of who we are, or who we know ourselves to be? That it just it almost, because from an outsider it looked like, and it seemed like, the emotion just became so overwhelming that action resulted so quickly. There was there was no time to think cognitively or right in a mindful way, if you.
Well, in general, kind of, let's say, the mechanism for those kind of things, and you talk about emotion, I talk about thinking, and of course those two things they are different sides of the same coin. Sometimes thoughts affect emotions, sometimes emotions thoughts first, but they all the time interact with each other. And I guess the thing in when we get really lost in lost in them, on the especially on the level of the brain, when we are stressed, we, or feel threatened, which can be, we can feel threatened in so many ways. There doesn't have to be anything physical happening for us to feel threatened, because even bigger threat to us often internally is a losing a sense of identity gets attacked, or rather that. So how would I put this? That if we think about patterns of our mind or internal things, the ego will do everything to defend how it sees itself, and that involves kind of maintaining how other people see us. And what is really important to understand about that kind of situation is that, no, I don't know, I mean the Oscar situation, I mean that kind of thing is that the brain goes into alert mode, or reptile brain. And this is, I think, one of the most important things for us to humans to know, is that when we are stressed out, every external input into the brain goes through a filter that filters everything through self-preservation. We no longer see the world, we just see self-preservation. While when we are relaxed, we actually see a complete context and other people. And imagine how crazy that is. After all, that it means that the external input that goes into the brain appears to our conscious mind differently depending on what's actually our mind state. So I don't know how much I like would want to go into the Oscar thing, but in that kind of thing, the thinking that very rapidly happens is that I need to do anything in order to protect this sense of identity, and I will do anything for it to be protected. Because in that moment, the thinking, if we keep in that kind of like context, thinking has become very narrowed down into me and this moment in time. That's why we do stupid things, including myself. We do stupid things because we see the world literally like this. And that's a very useful thing to know. When we know it, when we know that that's how our brain works, then we have the possibility to tell ourselves, look, you are not seeing the world at all the right way. Don't make any decisions right now. Because that's the, just as the final thing, do it. It's a little bit like throwing a lot of stuff in the air at the beginning. And one of the like biggest insights sometimes people can have, I remember with one client, it is tied into this a bit. A client who had very strong tendency to put themselves down every time they made a mistake. And once I asked her, what would happen if you didn't believe into that thought? And for her, that was a huge moment, because it was the first time that she considered that maybe I don't actually need to believe all my thoughts. Before it was like thought equals fact, which is what unfortunately many people kind of see.
Thought in the moment equals fast. Good morning, Jonathan, Stella, Guten Tag. Thank you for being here with us this morning. Mindfulness is the key. And you, Nikki, bring up a really good point in that it is, we're so caught in that moment. And I remember you, one of the things that we've talked about in the past of, seeing, and I brought up the Oscars thing, and I said, like, and the thing I know about that is not lost on me, that easily could have been me. It easily could have been me, Will Smith, reacting from a place. I have done that, right? It's not lost on any of us that we're all capable. You've said this before. Why would I do it? Well, because I'm capable of doing it, right? And so it's that when that emotion rises and we're in that narrow frame, how do we get ourselves out? How do we it's almost like you see the train, you see in your own life, you see you're on this train that's going down the wrong track. How do you pull yourself back into position?
We would say there's three three levels to that, if we may use such thing as levels. And the best what we can do if we on daily basis practice mindfulness, what happens in us is, well, first of all, it really becomes like a matrix thing, like when Neo is being shot by the bullets and one day he realizes that they're actually not real and they become very slow. When we have enough awareness into our own mind and enough stability, our internal life becomes like a slow motion. Things cannot pop like this, because in reality things don't pop like this. Not a single emotion or thought just all of a sudden pops into the awareness. It means we've been already lacking awareness for quite a while when we get into a very like a sudden outburst. So that would be, you could say briefly, that's the like that's the best protection against those, is that we on daily basis keep ourselves there. Second is that we know ourselves well enough that, okay, in those situations I will likely behave in the way I don't want to, and develop enough mental stability and some strategies of what to do instead. So that's like, at least, and in that is very important to, I call them alarm bells, putting like alarm bells inside ourselves. What is the emotional sign to me that I know that I'm slipping? And then the third one, which is the most difficult, is when we are in the reaction. Why it's the most difficult is because we are in that moment in fight or flight mode, and the last thing the body and the mind wants to do is to be quiet and not do anything. It wants to do exactly the opposite. Or if we can in that moment remember, okay, if I'm just for 30 seconds breathe, this I will see the world differently.
If you
And
can
in the yeah,
remember in that moment to breathe. And I just not remember, but I just thought of something that's coming very soon for us, which is we've got somebody with some questions that's going to help us through this conversation as well today. So, are you ready to pull in? Are you ready to pull in Maestro?
ready to pull in Maestro.
I'm so excited.
Let's see what he has cooked
Boom!
for us.
Morning,
Look
good
at that.
afternoon, good evening, depending where you are.
Good evening, sir. Morning.
Great topic, great conversation. There's so much. I never get to ask all my questions. I feel like I over, but yeah, this is a great topic. And Nikki, you hit it on the point when you had spoke on the fight or flight. Because when you were talking about it before, I literally wrote down fight or flight, and I was going to ask about it. So I love how you just had mentioned that. But I'm curious though, um, how important is breathing? We do our breathing before the session and the breathing during the session, but how important is the breathing aspect to getting yourself realigned back out that space?
Right. It's the easiest thing to focus on without having to do anything complicated. And why that is important is that when we at least have some control over something, especially of our body, if we can take over a function that is automated and make it conscious, what happens is that the autonomous nervous system shifts into parasympathetic nervous system, which, what does that mean, is that the fight or flight starts shifting off, because it cannot be on when the so-called relaxation and recharge. That's why breathing is so quick and useful way to get out of the fight or flight. And it is exactly the fight or flight that makes us interpret everything. It literally makes us see other people either as a problem or somebody who can get me out of the problem. We literally don't see other people anymore when we are in fight or flight.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why breathing, simple and effective.
So do your breathing. So when your teachers used to say, just take a breath and sit for 30 seconds and breathe, that it really does work. Or even the whole, breathing in a paper bag, right? Like that,
Right.
it really does work because it changes that focus and perspective. That's great.
Should people, or how important would you, either one of you say, the morning or the night, like when we get our thoughts back, like when we're really trying to take control over the thoughts, because you already spoke about thoughts, in our mind, we think it's facts and not, but is how important is the morning? Should a person align themselves in the morning, in the night, before? Which one really has a bigger impact on their day when it comes to getting control over the thoughts, or not controlling, just kind of getting aligned with their thoughts?
So if in the morning, when it's also the easiest time to actually meditate, in the sense that the body and things there's not so much impressions running in the mind and so on. I use this example because my experience when I started meditating 14 years ago, the first tangible thing that I saw in me, that I literally felt like there was a bigger space inside me. This is a clumsy example. I still use it because it's exactly how I see it. Is that before until we have, let's say, some practice or some mental stability, then we are like a person who's in a bathtub, and it's full of sharks and piranhas and all kinds, some toys also, but all kinds of stuff there, and it's very difficult to maneuver between them. But as we, for example, let's say in the morning, if we do our breathing, if we do our meditation exercise, then we notice I'm on a bond, I'm on a lake, I'm on an ocean. And what happens eventually is that our experience of what happens in our mind goes from this bathtub into an ocean. And when you see shark or fish in the ocean somewhere there miles away, it's not really such a big problem. So it is good in the morning to kind of create that space where things can settle a lot more easier. I don't know what, Stacey, your...
Yeah, I agree with that. You're in a different mindset. You just have to be careful. Like if you're a person who easily falls asleep, if you're not fully like engaged and awake, that's why sitting with the straight back, moving to a different space in a different place, and then giving yourself the grace and kindness and latitude and flexibility if you fall asleep, or you kind of go into, if you're new to meditating, and you're trying to get up early in the morning and make this your first thing, like that's okay. We talked about this in a lot of shows. Like it's about consistency. It's not about perfection in any way, shape, or form. It's about showing up and re-engaging for your day. So that's certainly one thing. And yeah, I agree with the you're in a bathtub maybe. I think at first, I don't know, Nikki, do you in Finland or in Czech Republic, do you use the term cold turkey?
Culture geek.
Cold turkey? Like I'm gonna do this.
Cold turkey? No, we don't.
Okay. So
I know what you mean. I know what you mean.
Yeah, that saying of like, I'm going to do this cold turkey. I'm just going to go all in, and I'm just going to, not ease my way, or I'm going to change something and I'm going to stop doing something. I'm going to do a cold turkey. But anyways, so this idea of, at least my experience as an American tends to be that we tend to go all in. We're like, I'm going to meditate every day and I'm going to, da, 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 da. And I don't see that's the way it for me, at least, I don't see that's the way it occurs. I think it's evolving, and you kind of weave your way in and out of your experience. That's at least been my experience, and those that I've spoken with about how their meditation journey has kind of unfolded.
Yeah, meditation is not the best habit to try to approach as a performance, and it's definitely not as a sense that you get rid of your thoughts or something. It's almost like, I've been 2 days at gym, why cannot I like lift this house up? Like, what's happening? I'm not very good at meditating. That's very common. People meditate 2 days and they say they have thoughts. And getting into your next question soon, Maestro, very quickly, you said something important. You pulled back the word control your thoughts, because that's exactly what one doesn't want to get into, because it's an endless battle. What we want to learn to do is to guide our attention. Where do we actually pay attention to? That's what we can do. And the good example sometimes in classic explanations is used that if you try to get rid of thoughts versus actually having this deep awareness that you can direct. It's like two persons are walking on the road, and they notice, whoops, the whole road is covered with broken glass, and the other person starts to come up with a plan. How do I cover the whole endless road so I don't step on the glass? And then he doesn't notice the other guy actually put on his shoes and is walking over the glass. So that's a bit better strategy, is to direct the attention than try to work out all the thoughts. That's impossible.
Just put on the shoes, walk on. These boots were made for walking. That's
Yeah.
what you do. And you had mentioned before that's about the 6,000. I think that's very important to keep in mind. People, it's 6,000 thoughts. That's a lot of thoughts. Like what affects these thoughts the most before we take this reaction that Stacy had brought up with the example?
That's by the way, really good question. I have some thoughts on that, but I don't know if Stacy, you want to go first.
No, go ahead, Nikki.
Okay, so
this will minus you 10 thoughts of your 6,000 thoughts for today.
Yes. So what affects the thoughts? That's actually related to the very question is what are those 6,000 thoughts, in the sense that once, it's not even super long, some time ago, I was sitting on our terrace and I was just looking out, and all of a sudden this question popped into my mind, kind of like, Nikki, how do you think? And I was like, right. And the question got even deeper. It's like, well, how would you explain to somebody how exactly do you think? And whoa, that's not an easy thing to answer. But I started from my, let's say, meditation experience, I started looking into my mind, and I'm sure there's a lot of study in there. But when we really want to kind of start mastering our internal life and our thoughts, well, there are memories. There are just random impressions. There's warnings from the reptile brain. There's perceptions. There's beliefs. There's like just some random lingering thoughts. Then there's our actual thinking, and all of those can be happening at the same time. So what affects most those thoughts is, well, how well we know ourselves, how aware we are. That affects most, because then we can recognize that well, judging other people is a very good example. When we are aware, when we know that we have our one part of our brain is judging everybody, and honestly, especially judging other races and other different looking people, because they are the ones who are more unknown. If we don't know it, first we are going to like go freak out when we notice that I judge somebody from a different race. I'm a bad person, or worse, a lot worse, we don't notice that it's a judgment. We think it's a fact. And so the thing, for example, there is, when we know it, when we have awareness, we can just see, okay, hi there, nice judgment. I'm actually going to get to know this person. So that would be why knowing ourselves and knowing how our internal world works, why it's practically quite useful.
Yeah, well, and I love how Jonathan shared that this is, it's a rhythm. It's not it's a motion, it's a movement, it's a dance, and it's in any given moment, right? So when you talk about recognizing your thoughts and becoming more aware of your thinking, some of that happens cognitively, and some of that happens, I'm going to say, for me, some of that happens spiritually or energetically or however you want to interpret that, but it's more of a felt sense. And it's in any given moment, right? Like in this moment, what are my thoughts doing? How am I navigating them? Am I navigating them in a way that is more in tune and in alignment than I was a year ago? Certainly. And I can see that from a year ago. How am I from yesterday and comparative to yesterday? I can sense it. It's just not as clear to me yet. A year from now, it will be even more clear what this moment, how the messiness of my thoughts, let's say.
Great way to put it. I like that.
Yes.
And it gets messy.
It's messy. It's messy. And nobody else can see it for you, really. You see it in the projection, in the responses and projections and others. The only way I think for me at least, the only way I really see it is by others. And when I'm, especially those that I'm closest to, like Tim Gonzalez, Kayla Gonzalez, TJ Gonzalez, those that I see on a daily basis. And many times that's really difficult. Nikki, we use the Volley, Nikki uses Volley with me. And it's an app where I like to think of it as the, what Slack did for email, Volley did for Zoom, right? So it's almost like a Marco Polo where you're giving short video and you're communicating in short video clips versus messages, but at your own time. And the thing about that, they're having a really, really hard time. It's a startup. They're having a really hard time with attracting and retaining users on the platform. And I believe, and I'm talking to a woman on there who's a social scientist, I believe it's because we don't often see ourselves in short clips and the ability to go back and rewatch in a 3-minute burst. And like, there's just something about really coming face to face with ourselves. We see that with those around us that are closest to us, but it's easy to say it's them. It's easy to be like, no, that's Tim Gonzalez's issue. No, it's not. It's Stacey Gonzalez's issue, really. And so how do we see our thoughts? We see it reflected in ourselves. And I think a tool like that, if you're, even if you want to see your thoughts, record yourself, go back to it, look at it a year, a month later, 5 days, whatever. You'll know who you were. You'll know who you were then. You'll be able to deconstruct it a little better if you really, really want to reflect.
That's a really interesting, by the way, observation or thought from that lady. It's really quite close to some kind of true about it.
I completely agree. I don't know too much about Volley. I've heard of it though, but you got me thinking like, oh, okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, well, it's how do you become a mirror for yourself? If you really, Nikki knows this, we were doing some work together and I don't even remember at the time what I was struggling with. So I took my phone. Here's a practical, right? Like I'll give you, because I'm the queen of like, let's make it practical. Let's take it from this abstract and make it practical. Like, how do I get to be more aware of my thinking, right? That's the ultimate question. So here's a hack. I take my phone, I'm sitting at my computer, I put it on the little stand, I put on video record while I'm working. And here was I was doing some creative I was using Canva, I was doing some sort of a creative project. Nobody in the office, just me. And as I'm doing it, I hear myself be like, oh, stupid. Oh God, little whispers that I'm saying when I went back and like reviewed the video, right? And I'm like, oh my gosh, Stacey, what messages am I sending to myself by calling myself stupid, getting frustrated? The little things that you don't notice become very noticeable. And we have the tools to do that, right? I don't care if you use Volley, I don't care if you use the app on your phone, record on your phone. If you really want to know who you are, you're the only one that can figure that out.
I'll add something. That's why takes some courage and real desire to know oneself, to record oneself and look at oneself, because there are a lot of clues about our thinking comes through a little bit how we move, how we say things, and I'll try to bridge that into something that is also quite important or interested about thinking, is that let's say we record ourselves and we watch ourselves doing something, and then we decide that, okay, now I saw that thing in me, it means this, and from now on I'll do this. And there's something we don't often ask ourselves: how do we know that we are right about it at all? How do we know, how did we come to that conclusion that we actually consider something to be right? And that's something that we go deep into, that can mess us up a bit if we don't do it with some humor, because it can be actually even quite scary. Well, it is quite inner work to start looking at your decision, and at least in my case, many times as I've done it, to notice, oh, I'm completely selfish, don't care at all what the other person was thinking, only looking out for my own interest, and to look at those moments and see that, right, well, it is true, well, I can work with it. But of course, when we work with those things, then the reward for that is like so much inner space and so much more freedom. But it takes a lot of self-awareness and honesty and courage and digging into notice that how much how we think is actually very either confused or flawed or selfish. Now I don't, how would I say, not selfish in the like you are a bad person because you're selfish. Selfish in the way that we do things that are super limiting for ourselves.
Yeah.
So that's a good question to ask oneself. How do I come to conclusions? How do I know that I actually came into any kind of right conclusion?
Yeah. Yeah. So as we get ready today for the guided meditation, Maestro, any parting, any closing words, thoughts before we kick you to the curb?
Well, I love the metaphor. I would say, going back to the practicality, when you were giving your example, Stacy, I felt like for people that play sports, they have this term called watching film. Even the best sports players watch the film, and watch the replay, so that way they can see what they need to do better next time. So I think that that's just something, metaphorically speaking, I can see that, people need to kind of watch their film,
Yeah.
from time to
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, you want to be an elite, you want to be an elite athlete. I would agree. You slow-mo your film, you see how you've interacted. You want to be an elite human, play your film back. It'll tell you everything you need to know. Great analogy. Thank you.
Even better than having a camera, hire a coach.
Yes.
Because I mean, really, it's
Yeah,
the coach.
right.
If the coach is aware,
right.
they can be
That's
one
right.
of the best mirrors to you because they'll be like,
That's right.
hey, I noticed that in last 3 sessions, every time you use that word, it's like your eyes are becoming a bit more wet. Like, what's happening there? Oh, I didn't even notice. Okay, then
Yeah.
you look into it, and then they find something really deeply important about themselves, but they weren't aware of it themselves.
That's a great point. So Nikki's a coach and he's ready for hire.
You are soon a full coach, like fully professional coach.
Yes. All right, Maestro, thank
Thank
you for
Thank
being
you.
here with us today. All right, Nikki. So get us ready for the meditation
Yes.
today.
So this, since this is a session where we talk at least a bit about thoughts and attention and recognizing the part in us that is actually aware of the things, the part that often gets then lost in all the thoughts and thrown around like a leaf. In order to little bit get a taste of that, we do something a bit different. So in the earlier meditations, we always had bit of visualization, like actually working with energies, breathing, and so on. And this is more of what is sometimes done in the retreats and so on. There's different, it's deep introspection or samsang or so on. But this is actually, I will be guiding us through different questions. And the purpose of those questions is not for you to have right answers, but to start through that guidance, to start getting some sense of recognition of like what actually happens inside you when you're thinking, like how do you actually function. Often say this thing that we live in the world we pay attention to. Because it really seems to be true to me, and we can talk about that more next week. But what I wish that I'm able to communicate or like guide you through this session, 15-20 minutes, is that you get at least a bit of experience that indeed it is your attention that you can direct, and it is the attention itself that kind of illuminates things, makes it that some thought is more important and some thought is not, rather than that emotions and thoughts just randomly jump into our field of awareness and then they do something to us. But it is actually that we are the ones who not only we direct the attention, but we generate those thoughts. So let's go, and I'll just you can simply follow the guidance, and I'll kind of guide us from the external to the internal world. And yet throughout this guidance, if you can notice that what is all the time present is part of you that is aware, and then there's part of you that is constantly making some kind of commentary about it, and the commentary can simply be allowed to be there, and there's nothing you can do wrong, nothing you can do particularly right. When you know this thought, just come back to the meditation, because in the end, mindfulness, you are meditating, you're aware at that very moment when you notice that I was distracted. That's when you were aware, hey, I was actually distracted. So now, if I would invite you, rather than closing your eyes, as you keep your body straight and relaxed, it's important or useful that your body or muscles are relaxed. You can look around your surroundings, the room, just intently, like just almost like a camera. Just look like a maybe 360 look around your room. And if you can pick one item, artifact, whatever it is, you can pick one thing in that room that you often overlook. It's always there, but actually you hardly ever notice it. You can pick that one. I don't mean physically to pick it in your hand, but just pick that up with your attention. Just look at that. No need to try to figure it out. This is already something important that you can start noticing, is that if you in relaxed way observe and look at something, it will start revealing itself to you. Things starts revealing themselves to us, or rather our thoughts about them are start to get revealed. Things inherently in them, whatever items, words we see, they are inherently, they don't have any defined meaning. It's we with our thoughts that we kind of infuse the meaning into them. So if you can just in relaxed way, what's that object? What are you noticing in that object that you never maybe really noticed? Maybe some shade of color, maybe some form, whatever it is. What is the difference between how it feels to intently observe something versus automatically just look at things quickly? What's the difference on the level of feeling? Can you right now notice that part of your mind is like looking for some answer? You can be aware of that. Like I said, there's nothing you need to figure out or have a right answer. We are just kind of getting closer to the depth of the awareness. And what would you say? What seems to be a slight or a big difference between how you're feeling inside in your body right now compared to, let's say, 3 minutes ago? What's the main sensation? What's the main feeling right now present in you? Where is it? Where in your body is it appearing, this feeling? can pay attention to the feeling, you can relax into it, you can breathe into it. And the feeling, is it in the attention, in the paying the attention to itself, or is it that the feeling appeared from somewhere else? Can you become aware of the soles of your feet? Can you feel the floor or whatever you're touching? Really sense the details of the experience of your feet, the soles of your feet, your toes touching the ground, the floor. When you were just a while ago watching that item or that artifact in your room, or that emotion, that feeling, where was this sensation? Because after all, your feet were touching the ground all the time. What about now, as you still have your eyes closed? How do you recall? How did it look like, that thing that you were observing in your room? And isn't it true that right now you've been actually guiding your attention between things? And that those are the very things you are experiencing because you are guiding your attention towards them. You looked at the item, you looked inside into the feeling, you felt the sensation of touching the ground. Now you are looking at it, a memory about this item. It's quiet. I'm being silent, I'm not saying anything. And in this silence, what are some thoughts, emotion, what's starting to appear? Because that's the nature of our mind also. Things all the time appear there. They appear in this silence. They don't disturb it, they simply appear in it also. In this silence that you can, in this silence where everything appears, your body, the room, the house, the city, the country, and as I said, the city, and as I said, your country, it's likely that in your mind starts now appearing associations that you have with the country you're in. Pleasant, unpleasant, neutral. They simply are appearing there. You are aware of them. They cannot do anything to you, even if you think your president is an idiot, even if you think some politicians are idiots, even if you think somebody is a hero. None of those thoughts or impressions can do anything to you. They are impressions in your mind. And few, even seconds from now, they'll be gone. So being aware of this silence, size of our planet, the whole space, the whole planet. What's at the core of this silence? And if right now your mind is saying, am I experiencing silence? now I'm having these thoughts. Should I be experienced in a different way? Be aware of that part of you. Even that is can't do anything to you. It's just appearance in the mind that you can be aware of. It's just part of your mind that is trying to assess and estimate things, but it's not speaking truths. It's just a function of the mind that you can be aware of. So at this silence that is as small as an atom at the core of your heart and also as big as the whole universe, what's at the core? What's the essence of this space and this silence? What can you sense with your whole body? What can you sense with your awareness? What's behind, what's below everything? And can it be explained, or does it need to be, can it be experienced, or does it need to be explained or figured out? When you feel good, do you need to construct it in your mind that you feel good and that you're at peace? Or is it, for example, simply now if you breathe in deep and gentle way into your stomach, if you put even your hands over your heart and breathe into your heart, relax fully into your stomach, allow the space below you, the space below your body to become soft, allow it to invite your muscles to relax, allow the space above you to pull you upwards a bit, to inspire the brain, to inspire the internal life. When you do that and relax into your body, into your heart, into your stomach, for example, right now, what's the feeling at the core of your body? Without needing to explain it or without needing to figure it out, simply allowing the attention, the presence to be filling. The presence can fill the stomach and your heart. You can be aware of this aliveness, this tingliness, this vibration, this even electricity in your stomach, your lower back, your heart, your lungs, your shoulders being relaxed, and this electric flow is flowing through your throat, through your head, filling your whole head, and from your head it flows and fills your throat, your shoulders, your heart, your stomach. Whether you're feeling 1% or 10 or 100% different, whether it's peace or aliveness or some warmth or whatever it is, where was it before, or is it simply that it's all the time there, simply that the attention needs to wake the quality or this emotion up a bit? And isn't it you who's guiding this attention and awareness, directing into these different parts of the body that I've mentioned? What about that part? What is that, or who is the one that is actually following the guidance? Who's the one that is aware of the words, aware of the sensations, aware of the body, and is even directing the attention itself? Who's that? And now you notice that all the cells in your body, all the atoms, all the particles are becoming lighter. They're opening up, they're vibrating, they're almost dancing. Your whole head, your throat, your neck, shoulders, hands, chest, upper back, lungs, heart, solar plexus, stomach, lower back, lower stomach, hips, thighs, knees, calf muscles, ankles, soles of your feet, tips of your toes, tips of your fingers, everything's vibrating as these cells of your body, atoms of your body, they are dancing and vibrating with aliveness. Even your thoughts, even your mental awareness, your physical awareness of your surroundings and yourself, everything is being filled with this dancing like quality of this aliveness, this joyfulness. It spreads into the room. Even every atom in your room is joining this dance, this vibration, this aliveness. All the items, the floor, the walls, the ceiling, the whole town, the whole city, the whole country, the whole planet, the whole space, the space between the planets, the whole space way above you endlessly, way below you endlessly, on your left, on your right side, in front of you, behind you, all connected in this vibration, in this dance, even this kind of hum, and your awareness connected with all that. And now you can take deep inhalation, as deep as you can. And as you exhale, just allow yourself to completely expand and relax into everything. And you can know that this awareness, your deepest awareness, can simply experience life directly. It understands and sees things as they are without needing to explain them. This is, we could say, the real flow. And as you're relaxing into this and resting in this, and as you're coming to the end of this meditation, you can decide what is that one thing you especially want to remember and keep close to your heart from this meditation. Okay, so thank you everyone. I'm going to sneeze my nose now, just that you know.
Beautiful. Thank you, everyone. We look forward
Yes.
to seeing here. We'll see you
Yeah.
here.